Stevie Nicks is one of the most iconic figures in rock history, best known as the mystical, ethereal voice of Fleetwood Mac. With her signature style, poetic lyrics, and haunting vocals, she became the embodiment of 1970s rock and roll. But Nicks wasn't just a musical muse. Her turbulent personal life, struggles with addiction, and impulsive decisions often made her just as fascinating off stage as she was on it. Born Stephanie Lynn Nicks on May 26, 1948 in Phoenix, Arizona, she received her famous nickname purely by accident. As a toddler, she struggled to pronounce Stephanie, instead saying TD, which eventually evolved into Stevie. That childhood mispronunciation would go on to become one of the most recognizable names in music history. Her mother, Barbara Nicks, was fiercely protective, keeping a close eye on her only daughter. Stevie spent much of her childhood indoors, later describing her upbringing as feeling almost locked away. Yet during those early years of isolation, she found comfort in books and fairy tales, feeding the vivid imagination that would later shape her unique storytelling style. Because of her father's career as a food company executive, Stevie's childhood was anything but settled. The family moved frequently, bouncing between Arizona, California, Utah, and New Mexico. By the time she was a teenager, she had attended multiple schools, making it difficult to form lasting friendships. However, the constant change taught her to adapt quickly, a skill that would later serve her well in the unpredictable world of rock and roll. One of her earliest musical influences came from her paternal grandfather, Aaron Jess A.J. Nicks Sr., a country musician with dreams of stardom. Recognizing her talent early on, he taught 4-year-old Stevie how to harmonize, and the two often sang country duets together. Those simple, heartfelt moments sparked what would become a lifelong passion for music. Since her childhood nickname TD eventually became Stevie, her family also gave her a few more playful names, including Twiddle. Looking back, Stevie fondly recalled these early years, saying that some of her most cherished memories revolved around singing with her grandfather, AJ, and answering to the whimsical nicknames her family gave her. By the time she was 16, Nicks had already started exploring her talent as a songwriter. After receiving a guitar as a gift, she wasted no time putting it to use. One of the first songs she ever wrote was titled "I've Loved and I've Lost and I'm Sad, but Not Blue." Though she later joked that it wasn't exactly a masterpiece, it was her first step toward a career in songwriting, proving that her creative instincts were already taking shape. Her father's ever-changing job locations made it difficult for her to form lasting friendships, as she bounced between multiple middle and high schools. While she struggled to adjust to new environments, music became her refuge. Meanwhile, her mother's protective nature created a quiet sanctuary at home, giving Stevie the space to write poetry, practice her guitar, and develop the creative voice that would later define her music. Throughout her late teens, Stevie Nicks performed as part of Fritz, a psychedelic rock band that played gigs across the Bay Area. The group had the incredible opportunity to open for legendary artists like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, experiences that left Nicks both starstruck and inspired. Performing in front of her idols felt surreal, but it also taught her invaluable lessons about stage presence and showmanship, insights that would later help shape her own captivating performance style. As their musical connection deepened, so did their personal relationship. Around the time of her high school graduation, Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's partnership evolved into a romance. United by a shared passion for music, they decided to pursue their dreams together, determined to make a name for themselves in the industry. Nicks briefly enrolled at San Jose State University, intending to study speech communication. However, she quickly realized that her true calling lay in music. Unable to ignore her passion for performing and songwriting, she made the difficult decision to drop out, fully committing herself to a future in music alongside Buckingham. In 1973, after leaving Fritz, Nix and Buckingham recorded their first album together, Buckingham Nix. Released by Polydor Records, the album failed to gain traction, selling poorly and ultimately leading to the label dropping them. The commercial failure was a major blow, especially for Nix, who was determined to prove the industry wrong. Despite their disappointment and financial struggles, she and Buckingham refused to give up, staying in Los Angeles, practically broke, but unwilling to abandon their dreams. While Lindsey Buckingham battled mononucleosis, Stevie Nicks became the sole provider, taking on whatever job she could find to keep them afloat. She waited tables, cleaned houses, and even took odd gigs performing in small clubs, refusing to let their dream of making it in music slip away. Despite the financial strain and countless rejections, she remained determined to break through, hoping that another record label would take a chance on them. Their big break came unexpectedly. Producer Keith Olsen, a friend in the industry, played Frozen Love from Buckingham Nicks for Mick Fleetwood, the drummer of Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood was immediately drawn to Buckingham's guitar work and wanted to bring him into the band. But Buckingham wasn't interested in going without Stevie. He insisted that they were a package deal. After some initial hesitation, Fleetwood agreed, unknowingly setting the stage for one of the most legendary collaborations in rock history. In 1974, Stevie and Lindsey officially joined Fleetwood Mac, and the band's dynamic changed overnight. Nicks brought a mesmerizing presence. Her otherworldly voice, bohemian fashion, and poetic songwriting added a new dimension to the group. Suddenly, Fleetwood Mac was no longer just a blues rock band. They were on the verge of something bigger. The turning point came in 1975 when Fleetwood Mac released their self-titled album featuring Rhiannon, a song written by Nicks herself. Her electrifying performances of the song, draped in flowing shawls with her arms outstretched like a mystical enchantress, became her signature on stage. As Rhiannon climbed the charts, Stevie transformed into a rock icon, embodying the essence of 1970s rock and romance. With her hypnotic energy and ethereal charm, she captivated audiences, securing her place as one of the most unforgettable voices in music history. Stevie Nicks's mesmerizing stage presence became one of Fleetwood Mac's most unforgettable trademarks. But at first, it unnerved even her bandmates. When she performed Rhiannon, draped in flowing shawls, twirling in a near trance, Mick Fleetwood once remarked that it felt like watching an exorcism. But while Fleetwood found it intense, audiences were spellbound, and Nicks quickly became the band's most captivating performer. By 1975, Nicks had fully embraced her now iconic style, collaborating with designer Margie Kent to create her signature look, a mix of lace and chiffon shawls, Victorian-inspired ruffles, and platform boots. This bohemian mystical aesthetic became inseparable from her identity, turning her into one of rock's most recognizable figures. Over the decades, her ethereal wardrobe remained constant, reinforcing her image as a musical enchantress. Beyond her on-stage persona, Nicks was also a compulsive writer, chronicling her life, emotions, and experiences in extensive journals. She once explained that she kept them not just for herself but for future generations, particularly for her fairy goddaughters, so that they could one day read and understand the truth behind her rock star image. By 1976, Fleetwood Mac had begun recording their legendary album Rumors, but behind the scenes, tensions were boiling over. Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's relationship had collapsed, and the pain of their breakup poured into the music. Nicks channeled her heartbreak and frustration into Dreams, a song that became Fleetwood Mac's first and only #1 hit in the U.S. The irony was undeniable. While the world was falling in love with her voice and lyrics, she was privately dealing with the emotional wreckage of her past. Dreams was Stevie Nicks' way of turning heartbreak into art. As she poured her emotions into the song, the rest of Fleetwood Mac was unraveling, with multiple relationships within the band falling apart. The recording sessions for Rumors were infamously tense, fueled by personal drama, emotional wounds, and substance use. Yet, despite the pain and turmoil behind the scenes, the album became one of the most successful in music history, cementing Nicks and the band as rock legends. By 1981, Nicks was ready to carve out her own space in music, seeking a creative outlet beyond Fleetwood Mac. She released her debut solo album, Belladonna, which soared to the top of the charts. With hits like Edge of 17, the album showcased her pure, unfiltered artistic voice, free from the compromises of a band dynamic. Critics praised her for capturing the essence of her mystique, calling it distilled Stevie Nicks. Despite writing many songs about love, loss, and relationships, Nicks chose not to have children. She believed her true calling was her music, once stating that her purpose was to write songs that would comfort mothers and wives, rather than become a mother herself. However, she embraced a nurturing role in other ways, becoming a devoted godmother and mentor to many of her friends' children. At the height of her rock and roll fame, Nicks developed a notorious cocaine habit, a struggle that shadowed much of her success. She later admitted to keeping a gram of cocaine hidden in her boot at all times, a reflection of the excess and indulgence of the 1970s rock scene. Ironically, this period of heavy drug use coincided with some of the most prolific songwriting of her career, proving that even in her most chaotic moments, her artistry never wavered. By 1986, Stevie Nicks had reached a turning point. Watching so many of her musical idols, like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, fall victim to addiction made her realize that she needed to take control of her own life. Fearful that she could meet the same tragic fate, she checked into the Betty Ford Center for a 30-day program to battle her cocaine addiction. She emerged clean from cocaine, but unknowingly stepped into another dangerous cycle. Following rehab, Nicks was prescribed Klonopin, clonazepam, to help with anxiety and sleep issues. But what was supposed to be a short-term treatment turned into a years-long dependency. Soon, she found herself trapped in a haze of sedation, unable to fully engage in her career. Large portions of tours, recording sessions, and even personal moments blurred together, leaving her with entire gaps in her memory. The side effects of Klonopin began to take a toll physically as well as mentally. Nicks fell into a deep depression, and her weight ballooned from 125 pounds to over 170 pounds. The media fixated on her appearance, adding to her insecurities and emotional struggles. Ironically, this period also coincided with the success of her 1989 album, The Other Side of the Mirror, proving that even in her darkest moments, her music remained a force in the industry. By the time she embarked on her 1989 tour, Nicks was performing in a medicated fog. Years later, she admitted, "I have no memory of that tour." It wasn't until she saw photos and video footage that she truly realized how absent she had been from her own performances. In 1991, Stevie Nicks suffered a troubling on-stage collapse, forcing her to abruptly end a show after retreating backstage. While she officially cited exhaustion, those close to her suspected a deeper issue, a growing dependence on prescription medications. As these incidents became more frequent, her friends and loved ones pleaded with her to seek help, fearing for both her health and career. Nix's long battle with substance abuse had also taken a physical toll. Over the years, she underwent multiple surgeries, including procedures to remove nasal polyps, a consequence of her years of cocaine use. By the mid-1990s, she estimated that she had undergone at least 10 operations, each one requiring pain medication for recovery, a dangerous necessity that put her at constant risk of relapse. After each surgery, Nix struggled to taper off the painkillers, falling into a dangerous cycle of dependence. She visited multiple doctors across different states, unintentionally collecting overlapping prescriptions. This pattern mirrored the destructive habits of her cocaine addiction in the 1970s, only this time, the dependency ran even deeper. Her breaking point came in late 1993, when she suffered a serious fall that resulted in a head injury. The accident shook her to her core, making her realize that her life was once again slipping out of control. Determined to break free, she checked into a hospital detox program for 47 days. This time, when she emerged, she was completely free from Klonopin, ready to reclaim her health, her music, and her life. As Fleetwood Mac's fame skyrocketed, Stevie Nicks' personal life remained turbulent. In the early 1970s, she was briefly engaged to Don Henley, the legendary Eagles frontman. Though their romance ultimately didn't last, they remained on good terms, with Nicks lending her vocals to several Eagles tracks over the years. One of her most deeply personal songs, Sarah, was inspired by a painful chapter in her life, her decision to terminate a pregnancy during her relationship with Henley. The experience left a lasting emotional imprint, and the song's haunting lyrics reflect that bittersweet sorrow. Though she rarely spoke in detail about it, her music became the outlet for emotions she struggled to express otherwise. Another Eagles bandmate, Joe Walsh, would later become one of the great loves of her life. Nicks described Walsh as her soulmate, the one person she could have truly seen herself with long term. However, their mutual struggles with substance abuse ultimately drove them apart. She later reflected that their love story was the greatest relationship I never quite got right. In 1982, grief pushed Nicks into one of the most impulsive decisions of her life. After her best friend Robin passed away from cancer, Nicks was devastated, particularly over the fact that Robin had just given birth to a baby boy before her death. Overcome with the need to care for the child, Nicks married Robin's widower, Kim Anderson, believing it was the best way to honor her late friend's memory. The decision, however, was made in grief, not love, and their marriage ended after just 3 months. She later called it a completely insane thing to do, a moment of heartache-driven desperation that she deeply regretted. Even after annulling her marriage to Kim Anderson, Stevie Nicks remained deeply committed to her late friend Robin's son, whom she had promised to care for. She took her role as his godmother seriously, ensuring that he had the support he needed, including paying for his schooling. For Nicks, this was her way of honoring Robin's memory, even if the marriage itself had been a mistake. By 1997, Nicks found herself back with Fleetwood Mac, officially reuniting for the dance tour. After years of turbulence, solo projects, and temporary collaborations, the band managed to set aside decades of personal drama to deliver one of their most successful comeback tours. On stage, Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham rekindled their musical chemistry, proving that despite their complicated history, their connection as performers remained electric. However, the emotional wounds between them had never fully healed, and the tension, though less volatile, still lingered beneath the surface. In 2004, Nicks turned her attention to philanthropy, launching Stevie Nicks' Band of Soldiers, a heartfelt project aimed at helping injured military veterans. She began donating iPods filled with music to wounded soldiers at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, hoping to provide them with a personal soundtrack for recovery. Her goal was simple: to bring comfort through music, just as it had always been a source of healing for her. As she reflected on her life and career, Nix made it clear that she didn't dwell on regrets, even the heartbreak, addiction, and impulsive decisions that had shaped her journey. Instead, she wanted her experiences to serve as lessons for younger female artists, hoping they wouldn't have to endure the same struggles she did. "I want them to see what I did so they don't have to," she once said, embracing her legacy not just as a rock icon, but as a mentor to future generations of musicians. Already a rock and roll Hall of Famer with Fleetwood Mac in 1998, Stevie Nicks made history again in 2019 by becoming the first woman to be inducted twice, this time as a solo artist. This achievement cemented her status as a trailblazer, proving that her impact on rock music extended far beyond her work with the band. No other female artist had ever received this honor before, making it one of the crowning achievements of her career. Even as the years passed, Nix remained creatively active. Throughout the 2010s, she continued to record new music and collaborate with contemporary artists, lending her haunting vocals to tracks with Lana Del Rey and the Foo Fighters. Far from slowing down, she embraced new generations of musicians, proving that age was no barrier to artistic evolution. At the same time, she kept touring with Fleetwood Mac, captivating audiences with her spellbinding performances. Throughout her career, Nix has maintained deep connections with members of the Eagles, both romantically and musically. Her relationships with Don Henley and Joe Walsh were widely publicized, and she even had a close friendship and occasional collaborations with Glenn Frey. Over the years, she has playfully referred to the Eagles as her extended family, though many of those relationships were marked by emotional highs and lows. Stevie Nicks has lived a life filled with passion, love, and music, but also with sorrow, sacrifices, and personal battles. As she faces the challenges of aging and the ghosts of her past, one thing remains undeniable: her legacy in music is eternal. Her songs continue to inspire, and her voice still carries the magic that made her a legend. What are your thoughts on Stevie Nicks's incredible journey? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out more stories about the legends who shaped music history.